The disappearance of Flight MH370 is one of the biggest mysteries in modern aviation history.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
On the night of March 8, 2014, a routine commercial flight departed Kuala Lumpur and quietly entered history. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 lifted off just after midnight, carrying 239 people bound for Beijing. The weather was calm. The aircraft was modern, reliable, and fully operational. Nothing in the flight plan or early telemetry suggested trouble. Less than an hour later, the aircraft vanished.
What really happened to Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 10 years ago?
At 1:19 a.m., the pilots made their final routine transmission. Good night, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, contact HME 20.9.
Moments later, the plane's transponder stopped responding. On civilian radar screens, the aircraft simply disappeared. At first, controllers assumed a technical fault. Aircraft systems fail. Signals drop. These things happen. But this time, something was wrong. Military radar later revealed that MH370 had not continued toward China. Instead, it turned sharply west, crossed back over the Malay Peninsula, and headed out over the Indian Ocean, without any distress call, without any attempt to communicate, and without explanation. For hours, it continued flying in silence.
MH370's disappearance remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. The final search for the doomed aircraft, our next report, taking a look at the new area and the past efforts to find the missing plane.
By dawn, one of the most extensive search operations in aviation history was underway. Initial efforts focused on the South China Sea, where the aircraft was last expected to be. Ships, planes, and satellites scoured the water. Nothing was found. No debris, no oil slick, no emergency locator beacon. As days passed, it became clear the search was happening in the wrong place. Analysis of satellite communications between the aircraft and an Inmarsat satellite revealed something unprecedented. Even after disappearing from radar, MH370 continued to exchange automated handshakes with the satellite network for nearly 7 hours. These brief signals did not transmit location directly, but they did reveal timing and distance. When plotted, they formed 2 possible arcs across the globe. One arc passed north, over Central Asia. The other curved south, deep into the Indian Ocean.
The last-ditch attempt to find the wreckage is in a new search zone in the Indian Ocean.
Investigators eventually ruled out the northern route. The southern arc, stretching into one of the most remote regions on Earth, became the focus. It was an area thousands of kilometers wide, with ocean depths exceeding 5,000 meters and some of the roughest conditions on the planet. The search expanded accordingly. Over the next several years, multiple nations committed ships, aircraft, sonar systems, and satellites. The operation became the most expensive search in aviation history, costing more than $150 million. Vast swathes of seabed were mapped. Underwater mountain ranges and trenches were charted for the first time. Still, nothing definitive was found. Then in July 2015, the ocean finally spoke. On Réunion Island, more than 4,000 kilometers from the likely crash zone, a large piece of aircraft debris washed ashore. It was identified as a flaperon from a Boeing 777 wing. Serial numbers confirmed it belonged to MH370. For the first time, there was physical proof the aircraft had gone down in the Indian Ocean. More debris followed. Fragments believed to be from the horizontal stabilizer, interior cabin panels, and engine components appeared along the coasts of Mozambique, Madagascar, Tanzania, and South Africa. Each piece was carefully analyzed. Damage patterns suggested a high-speed impact with water rather than a mid-air breakup. But the main wreckage and the flight recorders remained missing. By 2018, governments faced a difficult decision. The official search was suspended, having covered more than 120,000 square kilometers without success. Families were left with partial answers and no closure. That is when the search shifted from governments to technology. A private American company, Ocean Infinity, proposed a new approach. Instead of towing sonar behind ships, they would deploy autonomous underwater vehicles, robots capable of operating independently at extreme depths for days at a time. These machines could map the seabed with unprecedented resolution, scanning terrain humans could never reach. Ocean Infinity's first mission covered an area nearly equal to all previous searches combined. Once again, no wreckage was found. But the mission proved something critical. The technology worked. Behind the scenes, it was improving. By the early 2020s, Ocean Infinity had developed a new generation of autonomous systems. These vehicles could coordinate with each other, adapt their search patterns using artificial intelligence, and operate without constant human supervision. At the same time, researchers outside official investigations began re-examining old data with fresh eyes. One of them was a British aerospace engineer named Richard Godfrey. Godfrey focused on something that had existed all along, but had never been used in aviation investigations: a global amateur radio network known as WSPR, or Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. This system records how low-power radio signals bounce around the Earth. When a large object like an aircraft passes through those signal paths, it creates subtle disturbances. Those disturbances are logged. Godfrey analyzed archived WSPR data from the night MH370 disappeared. Using advanced algorithms, he identified a sequence of signal disruptions that aligned in time with the aircraft's disappearance and satellite handshakes. When mapped, they traced a path consistent with MH370 flying south for hours into the Indian Ocean. The data converged on a specific region, an area just outside the original government search zone, later referred to as the Seahorse Zone. It was rugged, deeply trenched, and previously considered too complex to search effectively. This time, the search would not rely on probability alone. In early 2025, Ocean Infinity returned to the Indian Ocean with its most advanced vessel yet, equipped to deploy a coordinated fleet of autonomous underwater drones. These machines descended more than 6,000 meters into total darkness, scanning the seabed with multi-beam sonar, synthetic aperture imaging, and sub-bottom profilers capable of detecting objects buried beneath sediment. For days, the seabed revealed only rock and silt. Then one vehicle detected an anomaly. It was long, flat, and metallic, roughly the size of an aircraft wing section. Partially buried, but clearly artificial. A second pass confirmed internal rib-like structures. A third scan revealed torn edges consistent with impact damage. Within a 15-kilometer radius, additional anomalies appeared. One matched the dimensions of a fuselage section, another aligned with a tail assembly. The positions matched the predicted crash zone derived from satellite data, debris drift models, and WSPR analysis. Verification took weeks. Engineers overlaid sonar images with Boeing 777 schematics. The proportions matched. The spacing of internal structures matched. There was no geological explanation for the shapes. Independent analysts reached the same conclusion. The wreckage was real. The discovery was classified while authorities reviewed the findings. When confirmation came, it triggered the formation of a new international task force. The objective was no longer to search blindly, but to recover the most critical evidence: the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. Remotely operated vehicles were deployed with extreme caution. At these depths, pressure exceeds 600 times atmospheric levels. Any mistake could destroy fragile evidence forever. Cameras captured haunting images, twisted metal half buried in sediment, wiring exposed, panels scarred by violent impact. Serial numbers confirmed the aircraft's identity. Recovery focused on documentation first. High-resolution imagery recorded the wreckage field in detail before any attempt was made to move objects. Investigators looked for signs of fire, structural failure, or in-flight breakup. Early observations suggested the aircraft entered the ocean intact, at speed. For the families of those on board, the news brought conflicting emotions. Grief resurfaced, but so did relief. After more than a decade, MH370 was no longer a mystery without form. It had a location, it had evidence. The black boxes, once recovered, would hold the final answers. They would reveal cockpit conversations, system failures, control inputs, and the aircraft's final trajectory. They would confirm whether the end came suddenly or unfolded over time. They would turn speculation into fact. MH370 disappeared in an era defined by technology, satellites, and constant connectivity. Its vanishing exposed the limits of those systems. Its rediscovery, 11 years later, came only through the convergence of autonomous robotics, radio physics, artificial intelligence, and persistence. The ocean kept its silence for more than a decade. In the end, it was not force that broke it. It was patience, mathematics, and machines built to see where humans never could.
When we say disappeared, it disappeared from the civilian system because it didn't answer anymore